The narcissist, deeply immersed in their need to control, rarely notices the small, subtle shifts that signal the loss of power. They're so accustomed to manipulating the environment, to ensuring that they remain the center of attention, that they fail to see when that dynamic begins to crumble. It's not a loud or sudden realization. It's the creeping awareness that something has changed. And this change isn't marked by an argument, a confrontation, or an explosive moment. It's the quiet awareness that the world around them has shifted and they are no longer at the center of it. What happens in this moment is profoundly unsettling. The narcissist's usual mechanisms of control, whether it's guilt-tripping, manipulating emotions, or playing mind games, are no longer as effective. It's as if the game has changed, and they're still playing by the old rules. The person who was once so eager to please them, to win their approval, no longer seeks validation. They stop being the audience the narcissist is used to performing for, and instead they begin to live their own life. The narcissist doesn't notice it immediately. At first, it's easy to dismiss it. Maybe the person is just busy, or maybe they've had a tough week. But it's always in the back of their mind, this quiet sense that something isn't right. The narcissist might tell themselves that they can simply act a little more charming, a little more grandiose, that they can win the person back over with a few well-chosen words or a calculated gesture. But as time passes, they realize it's not working. The response isn't the same. The person isn't responding with the eagerness they once did. They don't come back for more attention. And this slowly begins to gnaw at the narcissist's sense of self. But here's the thing, the narcissist is not fully aware of their own vulnerability. They've spent so much of their life constructing this image of invincibility, of being the one who always has the upper hand, that the loss of control feels almost incomprehensible to them. It isn't until they notice that the other person no longer plays their game, no longer dances to their tune, that they begin to see the truth. They might try to patch things up with charm, manipulation, or a moment of false vulnerability, but it's too late. The other person has already stepped outside of the cycle. This moment of realization is often quiet, but it's one of the most powerful shifts in the narcissist's life. The world they've constructed begins to crack at its foundation, and the silence of the moment is deafening. For the first time, they realize they cannot simply control everything around them. They are not the center of the universe. And that realization, while subtle, is deeply disorienting. Because in that moment, they begin to understand that they have lost not only a person, but the very control they relied upon to define their existence. This quiet awareness doesn't scream for attention. It's not a dramatic event. It's a realization that occurs in the stillness, in the absence of the validation they once took for granted. It's in those quiet moments when they are alone with themselves that they come to grips with the truth. They've lost their power, and that is the most dangerous realization of all. First, they might deny it. Denial is a natural response when you've built your entire identity around being the one in control. They will rationalize it. Maybe the other person is simply distracted, or perhaps they're just going through a phase. The narcissist, in their arrogance, assumes that they can reverse the situation. After all, they've done it before. They've played this game of power for so long that they believe they can always win. But deep down, they know something is different. And it's in this moment, this quiet fracture of their worldview, that they first recognize they've lost their grip on the relationship and their power. For the narcissist, power is a cornerstone of their self-peer. It's not about love or connection, it's about dominance and control. They manipulate, deceive, and emotionally blackmail those around them, ensuring that they remain in the center of attention. Their relationships are not reciprocal, they are transactional. Every interaction is filtered through the lens of what they stand to gain. This keeps them secure until one day they wake up and realize that the person they've relied on for validation, for attention, is no longer playing the game. This is when the loss of control truly hits. It's when they see that the other person has stepped away from the emotional dependency they once relied upon. The narcissist's tactics, whether it's charm, aggression, guilt, or emotional manipulation, fail to elicit the same response. They can no longer provoke the desired emotional reaction. The person who once clung to their every word is no longer as eager, and for the narcissist, this is an unbearable truth. Power to them is not optional. It's an extension of who they are. In this moment, they can no longer rely on the old tricks. The facade they've built begins to crumble. They feel themselves losing the very thing that gave them identity, the control over another person. They're now left staring into the mirror of their own vulnerability. They can't manipulate this person anymore. They can't make them stay, can't make them feel guilty, can't make them come crawling back. The person has broken free. This loss of control isn't just about the relationship, it's about their entire sense of self. If they are no longer the one in charge, who are they? What happens when the power they so desperately cling to is no longer theirs to command? The narcissist begins to spiral, desperately trying to regain what they've lost. They may lash out, they may play the victim, they may try to negotiate or apologize, but deep down they know the game has changed. The power they once held so tightly is slipping away, and with it, so is their very sense of identity. And this is the moment the narcissist comes face to face with something they've never truly understood. They are not invincible. They are not in control of everything. And for the first time, they must confront the terrifying possibility that they cannot always bend others to their will. That loss, silent and sharp, is more destabilizing than anything they've ever experienced. It marks the beginning of a reckoning they are not prepared for. The narcissist by nature operates from a place of ego, of self-absorption. They are so focused on their own needs, their own desires, their own sense of importance, that they fail to recognize the significance of the moments where they could have done better. Every opportunity to engage authentically, to offer empathy, to show vulnerability, is disregarded in favor of manipulation, control, and self-interest. And yet those opportunities are given, often repeatedly, often at times when the relationship is still salvageable, when the bond is still intact, when the person they are with is still trying to reach them. The narcissist sees these moments, but they don't value them. They don't see the potential for connection, they see only the potential for dominance. They're so accustomed to being the one who dictates the terms, the one who always wins, that they believe those around them will always return to their side no matter what they do. And so, instead of taking the time to listen, to grow, to change in ways that could preserve the relationship, they double down on their habits of manipulation and control. They think that the person they're with will always be there, forgiving and waiting, because they've trained them to be. But eventually, the person stops waiting. The chance is missed. The moment to change, to do better, to be more than what they've always been, slips away. And that's when the narcissist realizes, in a moment of clarity, that they could have done something different. They could have chosen empathy over ego. They could have chosen vulnerability over manipulation. They could have been present, honest, and open, but instead they chose to play the game they always played, the one that was comfortable, the one where they remained in control. Now, as they look back, that opportunity to act differently feels like a distant memory, a fleeting chance that can never be recaptured. The person they pushed away, the one they could have treated better, is gone. And in this absence, they feel the weight of their choices. The truth becomes unavoidable. They could have been better. They could have saved what was once valuable, but they chose not to. The chance to make things right, to stop the cycle of control and manipulation, is no longer on the table. What remains is the empty space of what could have been, a reminder that their actions have consequences, and those consequences are often irreversible. In that moment of loss, there is no one to blame but themselves. They know they missed their shot, and the bitter taste of that reality lingers. It's not just about the person they lost. It's about the part of themselves they failed to acknowledge. The part that could have done better but didn't. The missed opportunity becomes a silent echo that follows them, a reminder of the price they paid for choosing power over connection. At first, the narcissist may try to replace what has been lost. They may throw themselves into new relationships, new projects, or distractions, anything to fill the emptiness. But this never works. It never fully compensates for the absence. The reality of the space left behind is far more persistent than any superficial attempt to replace it. The narcissist is forced to confront the fact that the relationship they took for granted, the one they thought they could always manipulate, control, and bend to their will, is gone. And the silence that follows is louder than any confrontation or argument could have been. This emptiness is not something that can be filled by just anyone or anything. It's a space that's deeply personal, intimately tied to the narcissist's need for admiration and validation. The absence of someone who once reflected their importance back to them, who gave them the emotional supply they so desperately sought. They might tell themselves that they don't need anyone, that they're perfectly fine on their own, but that's a lie. The empty space serves as a constant reminder that they relied on the validation, the attention, the power that came from their ability to manipulate the other person. What's worse is that the narcissist knows why the person left. They understand on some level the emotional bankruptcy they created. They understand that their actions, their need for control, their disregard for the other person's autonomy led to this moment. But instead of confronting the deeper truths of their behavior, they are left to face the absence itself. This absence becomes haunting, not because it's a simple emotional void, but because it forces the narcissist to realize something they've never wanted to acknowledge. They are not infallible. They cannot control everything. They cannot bend others to their will indefinitely. And now that person who once validated their existence is gone, and the echo of that loss follows them like a shadow. There is no simple way to escape this haunting reality. They can try to distract themselves, they can try to numb the pain, but the void is always there. It doesn't fade, it doesn't go away. It's the ever-present reminder that they let something precious slip through their fingers. And more than that, it's the reminder that the relationships they exploit don't last forever. The empty space, with all its sharp edges and quiet weight, becomes the reflection of their failure, the presence that never fully leaves, because it forces them to reckon with the truth of their actions. They can keep running, keep pretending, but the reality of what they've lost will always be there. And in that haunting silence, they are left to confront the cost of their arrogance and disregard for the very people who gave them the power they so desperately craved. This moment, when manipulation fails, is jarring. For the narcissist, it's as if the ground has shifted beneath their feet. They don't understand it at first. How can the strategies that have worked for so long suddenly cease to function? How can their words, their charm, their calculated emotional games no longer have the desired effect? The truth is that manipulation only works when the other party is either unaware of the game or is emotionally invested enough to play along. When the person on the receiving end becomes more self-aware, more emotionally resilient, or simply more independent, manipulation loses its power. It's not that the narcissist hasn't tried. They'll double down, they'll throw out every trick in their arsenal, shifting from passive-aggressive comments to overtly controlling demands, from feigned vulnerability to targeted accusations. They believe that if they push hard enough, the other person will fold, as they have in the past. But this time, something's different. The person sees through the smoke and mirrors. They no longer fall for the guilt trips. They refuse to take on the narcissist's emotional burden. They begin to set boundaries, to detach, and to respond not with compliance, but with clarity and independence. And that's when the narcissist realizes, finally, that their old tactics don't work anymore. Every attempt to manipulate, to exert control, to force the other person into submission only drives them further away. It's as if their power to influence has been nullified and they can no longer manipulate reality to their favor. The very tools they once wielded so effortlessly now seem impotent. And the effect of this failure is both bewildering and terrifying for them. They cannot fathom a world where their tactics don't succeed. They've based their entire identity around this ability to manipulate and control, and now, for the first time, they're confronted with the harsh truth that it's not enough anymore. This realization shakes them to their core. It isn't just the loss of a person, it's the loss of their ability to control the environment. They've always seen themselves as the puppeteer, pulling the strings and making others dance to their whims. But when manipulation no longer works, when their words no longer have the same power, the world around them begins to feel uncertain, hostile, and even alien. They've built their entire existence on a fragile foundation. And when that foundation starts to crack, everything they thought was solid starts to unravel. At this point, the narcissist is faced with a choice they've never truly considered: to confront the consequences of their actions and change, or to double down, spiraling further into desperation, resentment, and self-pity. The first step toward real change is painful because it requires acknowledging their own shortcomings. But the reality is that manipulation has consequences, and when those consequences catch up, they can no longer escape them. They can try to twist things back in their favor, but the power they once wielded has been irrevocably diminished. The only thing left is the aftermath, the recognition that their manipulation is no longer effective, and the realization that they must confront who they've become without the shield of control. The narcissist is a master of manipulation. They understand human vulnerability like a seasoned strategist. They know exactly how to exploit emotional needs, how to play on insecurities, how to create confusion and doubt. They keep the other person tethered, emotionally invested in a dynamic that always favors them. The narcissist plays a long game, using charm and coercion to ensure that they remain at the center of attention, the center of power. But what they often fail to account for is the power of self-awareness. The moment when the other person begins to see through the narcissist game. This is not about a dramatic confrontation. The powerful person doesn't need to shout or scream. They don't need to go to war with the narcissist. They simply need to wake up to the truth. And in that moment, everything changes. They begin to understand that they don't have to play the game anymore. They see the manipulation for what it is: the gaslighting, the emotional withdrawal, the false promises, the dominance masquerading as love. And they realize they don't have to tolerate it. They've been giving away their power, little by little, piece by piece, but now they see that they can stop. They can step out of the cycle. They don't need to be emotionally controlled anymore. They don't need the narcissist's validation. And when they do this, when they stop playing the game, the narcissist is confronted with something they can't manipulate: the power of someone who has taken back control. For the first time, the narcissist is powerless. They can try to reassert their dominance, but it doesn't work. The power dynamic has shifted irreversibly. The person who once gave them the emotional supply they craved is no longer playing along. They don't need the narcissist to validate their worth. They've reclaimed their independence, their identity, and their sense of self. This is a moment of profound power, not because it involves grand gestures or dramatic acts of rebellion, but because it involves a quiet inner strength. It's the power of self-realization, of recognizing one's own worth and no longer allowing someone else to dictate the terms of the relationship. The narcissist, in all their arrogance, fails to see it coming. They think they can continue to pull the strings, but they're no longer able to manipulate what is now untouchable. The powerful person has recognized their own value and stepped out of the shadow of the narcissist's control. In this moment, they hold something that the narcissist will never be able to take back, their own power. It's not about winning or losing in the traditional sense. It's about understanding that no one else can take your power unless you allow it. And once the other person understands this, once they realize that they have the ability to step out of the narcissist's grip, the game is over. The narcissist is left scrambling, trying to regain the control they once had, but it's too late. The powerful person has already taken back what was always theirs. The narcissist, for all their manipulation, has lost the one thing they feared most, the ability to control someone else's power. The narcissist has spent so much of their life building an identity based on control, on manipulation, on the ability to influence and dominate others. Their sense of self is intertwined with their power over people, over their relationships, their environments, and their perceptions of the world. They believe that they can maintain this power indefinitely, that their influence will always hold. But when that power slips away, when the person they relied on no longer plays the game, they are left in a state of disbelief. They cannot understand how this could happen. How could someone they once had so firmly under their thumb simply walk away, disengage, and reclaim their own power? This is where the struggle begins. The narcissist doesn't see that the reason they lost their power is because they have time and time again used and abused the very people who gave them that power. Their manipulation, their emotional exploitation, their disregard for the autonomy of others. All of it has built a fragile house of cards. And now when that house finally collapses, they are left standing amidst the wreckage, unable to comprehend the chain of events that led them here. They might look at the other person and wonder, with a mixture of anger and confusion, why they suddenly stopped playing along. What changed? They may replay the interactions in their mind, trying to find the exact moment when things started to slip. But they are blind to the fact that it wasn't just one event. It was the accumulation of all the small manipulative tactics they used, the slow erosion of trust, the relentless demand for validation at the expense of another person's needs. They can't see that their actions, driven by an insatiable need for control, have gradually drained the relationship of its authenticity and depth. Instead, they might look for external reasons. They'll blame the other person for being weak, for not understanding them, for not appreciating all they've done. They may shift the blame onto the world around them, onto circumstances that were beyond their control, never once considering that it was their own behavior that created the situation they now find themselves in. This inability to self-reflect is at the heart of the narcissist's struggle to recover. They cannot accept the truth that it was their own choices, their own actions that led to their downfall. And as long as they refuse to confront that reality, the struggle will continue. In the end, the narcissist is left with a question they can never fully answer. How did they lose what they once had? They will search for a way to regain control, to manipulate the situation back in their favor, but the answer will always elude them. The truth is simple yet painful. They lost their power because they never truly understood the responsibility that comes with it. They abused their influence until it disappeared, and now they must face the consequences of their own actions, a consequence they may never fully comprehend, let alone accept. When that power slips away, when the people they've relied on stop playing the game, they are left to confront a painful reality. Their manipulations no longer work, their tactics no longer hold weight, and the world around them no longer bends to their will. The consequences of their behavior catch up with them in ways they never imagined, and they are forced to face the empty space left behind by their own choices. The struggle to recover is long, often fruitless, because it requires more than just a change in behavior. It demands self-awareness and accountability, two things the narcissist has spent their life avoiding. Without these, the cycle will inevitably repeat, and the power they once wielded will remain out of reach. And so, the true lesson here is clear. Power is not something that can be held over others. It is something that must be earned through respect, trust, and genuine connection. It cannot be manipulated, nor can it be sustained through deceit. For the narcissist, the question remains, will they ever recognize the cost of their actions and change, or will they remain trapped in the same cycle, forever searching for control that they can never truly possess? The answer lies within their willingness to confront the truth of who they have become and to change before it's too late.